Salve omnes! Today we are going to talk about the perfect passive participle in Latin. The perfect passive participle is something that Latin really loves to use, and so we want to make sure that we have a strong foundation, so we'll be ready to translate it and utilize it in our own Latin sentences. So let's get started. So the perfect passive participle, I'm going to break that down a little bit. First, we'll think about the tense. So it's perfect. We have seen the perfect tense before in verbs. So this is like veni, vidi, vici, right? I came, I saw, I conquered. So we're familiar with the past tense. So this is the tense of our participle. And then as a participle, we're recognizing that that means that we're dealing with a verbal adjective, right? So the tense, of course, is passive, and as an adjective, the perfect passive participle will agree with a noun or a pronoun in case, number, and gender. In case, number, and gender. So finally, we can deal with the fact that it is passive. So far, we've really only seen active verbs. So an active verb is when the subject performs the action of the verb, right? So Quintus hands a book to Orbilius, right? Quintus is the subject and he's performing the action of handing the book. If we're dealing with something passive, we flip that around. So the subject receives the action, right? The book is handed to Orbilius by Quintus. So knowing what we know, let's see if we could translate a perfect passive participle. So here's a sentence based on what we've just been talking about. So Quintus librum a Orbilio traditum legit. Quintus librum a Orbilio traditum legit. So traditum is our perfect passive participle, modifying librum. So take a second to think, how would you translate this sentence? Right? We know a lot of it. Quintus librum legit, right? Quintus read the book. A Orbilio, by Orbilio. So now we just have to figure out traditum, that is modifying librum. So in fact, there are a couple ways we can translate this, right? So Quintus read the book having been handed to him by Orbilius. So traditum, having been handed, right? That's showing that it's perfect tense, that it's passive, that it's a participle, right? Having been handed to him by Orbilius, right? Now, while that phrase, having been handed, very well conveys that it is perfect, that it's passive, and that it's a participle, I think that might sound a bit stilted in English, right? That's not really how we talk. So we could simplify it, and we could instead translate it, Quintus read the book handed to him by Orbilius. So it's okay to translate the perfect passive participle and simplify it. Instead of having been handed, just say handed. Quintus read the book handed to him by Orbilius. And if we want to go one step further, I think we could even say Quintus read the book Orbilius handed to him, right? Quintus read the book Orbilius handed to him, right? So you've got three options, two that are much more conversational and one that's very, very literal. Now, how do we form the perfect passive participle? So we will create the perfect passive participle from the supine. We haven't gotten to the supine yet. We're gonna leave that down the road. But what's important is that you can find the supine in your dictionary. It is the fourth principal part, right? So And I know that so far in your book, you've only seen 3 principal parts, but from now on, you'll get 4. And when you look things up in a real Latin dictionary, you will see 4 as well. So what do we have here? Paro, parare, paravi, paratum. Paratum being our supine, or our 4th principal part. Moneo, monere, monui, monitum, right, monitum. Capio, capre, cepi, captum. So of course captum, and mitto, mitre, missi, missum. And so we're looking at missum. So the supine is most commonly formed by adding the suffix tum, right, like paratum, caputum, to the present stem. Sometimes by adding sum to the present stem. So that is how it is most commonly formed. However, we will need to do some memorization work, right? So this is something that you'll want to memorize as the basic information of all verbs that you meet from now on. But, you know, it's okay if you can't memorize everything. You can always find this information in your dictionary. And of course, if it isn't there, there's a couple reasons. One, because the 4th principal part is formed just as we might imagine, right? So it's just the tum ending on the present stem, and so they've left it out to save ink, I guess. Or because we might be dealing with something a little irregular, right? So there are some verbs like ardeo, ardere, arsi, which means I am on fire. And this verb is semi-deponent, right? So we haven't gotten to those yet, but you'll notice in your book that the 4th principal part is not listed, and that's because it's semi-deponent, which means it in the 4th principal part, in the perfect passive participle, it looks passive, but acts active. Anyway, we'll get to those down the road, so no need to fret. And also, there are verbs like the verb to be, sum esse fui, and verbs like furo, furere, I run mad, that are deficient, right? So those are 2 verbs that do not exist in the supine, and they do not exist in the perfect passive participle. So they will not be there because they don't have a perfect passive participle. So that is why they are not listed. Now, once you've gotten to the supine, it's pretty easy to decline the perfect passive participle from there, because perfect passive participles decline just like first, second adjectives, or like bonus aum. So paratum, right, will decline paratus, parata, paratum, right, paratus aum. The same with the others, monitus aum, cactus aum, missus aum. Just in case you are a little fuzzy on the bonus aum endings, I have monitus listed out here. So of course we would translate this having been warned, or simply warned. And we can see, right, the stem monit is going to go all the way through, and then we're just using our us aum endings. So monitus I o, moniti orum is os is, monita e a, arum is as is, monitum I o, monita orum is a is. Let's do a couple more sentences for practice. So here we have Brutus civibus facto suo territis respondit. So how might we translate this sentence? Brutus civibus facto suo territis respondit. So we see territis is modifying civibus, and here we can say Brutus responded, right? Brutus responded to the citizens having been terrified by his deed. Or more simply, Brutus responded to the citizens terrified by his deed. Let's try another one. Right? Aeneas invenit didodem iam perfidiae sue monitam. Aeneas invenit didodem iam perfidiae sue monitam. So, how would we translate this? Right? We notice didodem is being modified by our perfect passive participle monitam, right? Monitam agrees with didodem in case, number, and gender. They're both feminine, singular, accusative. So Aeneas found Dido, already having been warned of his treachery. Or Aeneas found Dido, already warned of his treachery. Okay, so two ways we can deal with that. One more sentence. Scintilla quinto misso Athenas, epistolam quotidie scripsit. Scintilla quinto misso Athenas, epistolam quotidie scripsit. So here we see that our perfect passive participle misso is agreeing with quinto, right? They're both dative, they're both masculine, and they are both singular. So what do we have here? Scintilla wrote a letter every day. So Scintilla wrote a letter every day to Quintus, having been sent to Athens. Or Scintilla wrote a letter every day to Quintus, sent to Athens. Or here we might want to, when we do our translation into English, add a relative clause. So Scintilla sent a letter every day to Quintus, who was sent to Athens. So if we think that makes our translation a little clearer, then we can add a relative clause, right? So 3 great options of how to translate this nice little sentence. All right, so that is the perfect passive participle in Latin. I hope you enjoyed it because you'll be seeing it all the time. All right, valete!